said, I can't tell you how many people have come back to me and said, I didn't like it at the time, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I went and got this job, and I just flourished. Would you be willing to go into your place of employment tomorrow and make the hard decision and communicate and execute the plan by realistically assessing your employees' skills to maybe move them into a different position? Maybe move them out. One of the problems that we have oftentimes is, this is what happens. If you're a good teacher, if you're a great teacher, what do you become? Principal. Different skill set. That's why you have a lot of great teachers who go into being principal and they fall apart and they can't do it. Now, if you're the best salesperson, what do you become? Sales manager. Different skill set. Now, we've talked about the skills. Let's move into the character issues. And I got 3 specific character issues that I'd like to share with you in the last few moments here. The first one is relationships. Now, if you're like most people, you probably say, wait a minute, relationships sounds more like a skill. There are relational skills. But I would say that the underlying thing about relationships is more an issue of character. It's more an issue of values. It's more an issue of what you believe about other people. You see, it's easy to go into a place of employment and to bump up against other people for 8 hours a day, and maybe they say something that rubs you the wrong way. Maybe they do something that causes a broken down relationship. It's easy in our day and age of throwaway relationships to make that value decision inside that says, I'm just not dealing with her anymore. I'm not going to give that guy any more time. I would say that that's an issue of character. People are too important. And your organization will never go as far as it needs to go or can go until those relationships. Now, I'm not saying you have to be lovey-dovey and do group hugs and all that kind of stuff, but I am talking about valuing the relationships enough that you will then move into the skill base of relational skills that you need to create those relationships. And you say, okay, Chris, that sounds all warm and fuzzy. What can I do tomorrow? I want you to think about that person. You know who I'm talking about. That person bugs you to death, annoys you, maybe even treated you wrongly at one point in your life or your career. I encourage you to take them to lunch tomorrow and say, you know what, I'm making a decision about how I value other people. It's a decision for me as a human being, but it's also a decision for our organization. Because I know that our organization will never go further until you and I have settled our issues and at least begun to appreciate one another and work together and to value one another. Could you do it? Could you walk into the office tomorrow and say, you know what, I'd like to take you out to lunch. I'll buy my treat. I don't want to go into the big thing right now, but I just want to tell you, I kind of want to bury the hatchet and let's get over some of these things and start moving on. That's leadership. Why is it leadership? Because you're going to initiate. Leaders are initiators. They're the people who make things happen. They're catalytic. They make things happen. Now, please, don't any of you ask me to go to lunch tomorrow. Could you go in and ask them to go to lunch? That's something right now leadership. Tomorrow morning, walk through the office, stop by their cubicle and say, what are you doing for lunch? Even if their lunch plans are already taken, they're going to be blown away by the fact that you even asked what their lunch plans are. You see, leadership is always about relationships. We talk about leading systems or leading organizations or leading businesses. You don't lead that. It's a misnomer. We do not lead organizations. We do not lead churches. We do not lead businesses. We do not lead nonprofit groups. What do we lead? People. We always lead people. And if the minute you begin treating people as a unit, you're not going to be able to lead because people are different. Everybody reacts to things differently. Everybody's wired differently. Some people are task-oriented. Some people are big-picture-oriented. You've got to realize that as a character issue, to appreciate and value individual people in individual ways, that's the kind of right-now leadership you can start tomorrow and will begin to increase your influence with people's lives. The next one is integrity. I probably don't even need to beat this drum very much just because of what's going on. We can just open the newspaper and go through over and over and over again. And quite frankly, I don't think we have an integrity crisis now. I think we're more aware of integrity breakdowns. You see, people are people. And people have been doing crazy things and ripping people off ever since human history began. You know, G.K. Chesterton gave a great quote. I don't know if you remember G.K. Chesterton, but he said original sin is the only philosophy empirically validated by 3,500 years of human history. You look back over the annals of time and you will see that we have breakdowns of integrity all the time. We know more about them now. We hear more about them now, but mainly because of mass media. People have been ripping people off forever. People have been hurting other people forever. I don't think we have an integrity crisis, but I do think integrity is something we need to take seriously as leaders. Why? Because people are going to look at you and they're going to ask, either consciously or subconsciously, do I trust this person? One of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my understanding of this idea of integrity was I was reading through a book. I don't even remember what the book is. I was reading through the book with a group of people I was taking through a leadership class, and the author made this point about the word integrity. Now think about the root word integrity. Integrity shares the root word with another word that we all learned, well, I never took this class, but you all learned in high school math. Does anybody remember what an integer is? What's an integer? An integer is a whole number. And this author unwrapped that issue of a whole number is an integer, and integrity is the idea of being whole. It means you don't lead half your life this way and half your life this way. You don't lead a third of your life this way and a third of your life this way and a third of your life this way. It means when somebody looks at you, they see a whole person. They know that when you speak, you are telling the truth because you are a person who tells the truth. They know that when you say you are going to do something, you're going to do it. Why? Because you're a person who does what they say they're going to do. My question for you would be to look inside your life tonight as you go from this place and you go home and you do your things before you get to work tomorrow. Say, what issue of my life is not whole that my employees can see? And that's an issue that you can rectify. One of the analogies I like to use with groups that I talk to is you're driving down the road and you've got a client or an employee and they're sitting over there and the cell phone rings and you pick it up, and let's just use a salesperson for example, and you're going, yeah, we can make that work. Yeah, I was just on my way over there. And you're winking at the person next to you and you're kind of chuckling about it because they know you're putting one over on the person on the cell phone, right? And you think, oh man, I pulled that one off. But what did you just do? You just told that person sitting next to you, I'm not a whole person. I tell the truth sometimes. I lie sometimes. Now, a few days later, you're driving down the road, cell phone rings, and who is it on the telephone? It's that person that was sitting with you a few days later, and they say, hey, what are we going to do about the Johnson account? And you say, yeah, about the Johnson account. What we're going to do is, they won't follow you because they don't know anymore. They can't trust anymore. There's always the question in their mind. Will it really take place? Does she really mean it? Is he really capable of doing what he says he's going to do? I love that concept of wholeness. And I remember that all the time. The integer, it's a whole number. Are you whole? Think about that before you march into your place of work tomorrow morning. What issue do I need to make whole? Maybe there's somebody that you've lied to in your place of employment. You want to break down communication. You want to break down relationships. You want to break down the execution of a plan. You want to break down the forward movement of your organization. Just lie to somebody. Maybe what you need to do is go in there tomorrow and say, I need to make things whole. Hey, let's go to lunch. And maybe you can kill two birds with one stone. You're going to take them to lunch because you never liked them anyway, which is the reason you lied to them in the first place. You're going to say, I lied to you. We need to settle this. And I'm going to take you to lunch and I'm going to buy because we need to develop our relationship a little bit. Why? So that we can become better people so our organization can move forward. And the last one, it's humility. You want to be a better leader. I want to talk to you about humility. I'm going to tell you the recent story first. I went down, I guess it was in April. We were on vacation in Florida, and I took my son to a Maximum Impact event that John put on down in Atlanta. He had two other speakers. He had Lou Holtz, and I don't know if you ever heard a speaker, but I'll tell you what, I'd never heard him speak before. He came on the stage, and initially I thought, oh boy, this is going to be interesting, you know. And after an hour, I said, man, he is one of the top 3 speakers I've ever heard. Tremendous speaker. The other speaker was a guy named Dennis Waitley. Dennis Waitley wrote a book called Psychology of Winning, sold $100 million worth of books and tapes in the 1980s. Now, I called Kevin Small, the president of Enjoy, and I said, hey, I want to come up there. I want to bring my son up there. And I'll tell you what, I'm putting on this conference in September. I just want to work. That's all I want to do. I just want to work. I just want to show up. I'll do whatever grunt work you want me to do. He said, good, I need somebody to schmooze Dennis Waitley. So he said, would you mind just schmoozing Dennis Waitley? I said, fine. Give me a car. I'll drive him around. I'll do whatever, you know. And that was my job. Dennis didn't know me from a hole in the ground. And we showed up and we picked him up at the hotel. And for 3 days, we drove Dennis Waitley around. Now, the first thing I told my son's 12 years old, and I had him read Seeds of Greatness before we went on there. I mean, think about that. Well, actually, at the time he was 11, and I forced him through Seeds of Greatness before we went, which is another book that Dennis Waitley wrote. And we got there, and I said, now, Christopher, you got to realize that Mr. Waitley does this about 150 times a year, and so don't be surprised, because you know how kids are. I mean, they just chatterbox, right? You know, especially because I'd given him all this fodder by reading his book in the first thing, and I thought, oh, maybe I've gotten myself into trouble. And I said, you know, just don't be surprised if there's an issue, you know, if he's kind of, you know, separates himself from us, because he's a different day, a different driver, a different person every day. Now, one of the stories that he tells in Seeds of Greatness is when he was in the Air Force or whatever military branch he was in, he was a pilot, and they trained them by sending them down into that dunk tank, right, where they drive you down into the pool and they flip you over, and we're just pulling in, and he was on his way somewhere. We were dropping him off to go somewhere, and Christopher, just as we pull into the driveway of the hotel, Christopher starts into this whole thing about, tell me all about that dunk tank thing where you drive in there. We literally pulled up just as he was asking the question. I got out of the car. I moved around to the other side of the car. I was just playing limo driver, right? And I opened the door for him, and I sat there. And I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, waiting, because Dennis Waitley took the time to make the difference in the life of a child. And I thought, what a tremendous, powerful sign of humility. I mean, a guy like Dennis Waitley could come and go and get in and get out and, yeah, nice to meet you, sign the autograph as he's walking and doing his thing. And I thought, that is really powerful to me. Not only to me, it makes a great story for me, but it makes a great impact on my son. It's a thing he'll remember for the rest of his life. I told him, I know this doesn't mean a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to spend 3 days with Dennis Waitley. You're going to remember this the rest of your life. The next story, and the one that I'd like to close with before I wrap up for us, happened to me when I was 11 years old. When I was 11 years old, I got the best job of my life. When I was 11 years old, I got a job that was better than the job I have right now, and I love to do what I do right now. This job was way better than that. When I was 11 years old, I came home one day. I'll never forget, as long as I live, I came home, and my mom had a sign on the door that said, welcome to the home of the newest ball boy for the Seattle Supersonics. I was 11 years old, and I went in, and I started working as a ball boy for the Seattle Superstars. I mean, it was a dream come true. 7 years, from the time I was 11 till I was 18. The first year, you probably remember the year we started out 5-12, or 5-17. I got there when we were 2-11. We switched coaches. We brought Lenny Wilkins in. We went all the way to the championship. We lost the championship that year. The next year, when I was 12, we won the world championship. I was in that ticker tape parade. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, I know you don't remember me, but you probably maybe remember, you know, I was the little runt in the back going like this, right? And but I want to tell you a story that happened to me. A few weeks into my job, I fell off a roof and I broke both my arms. I'm 11 years old. I break both my arms. And you know how they set your arms, right? You know, cast up to here. And I come walking in for work one day. And I walk up to Frank Furtado, and I don't know if you know Frank Furtado, but he's an old curmudgeon type, and he scared me to death back then. And he was taping the heels of Dennis Johnson. And Dennis Johnson, you know, they both just laughed. They said, what happened to you? Well, I fell off a roof and I broke my arms. And I said, can I keep my job? And Frank Furtado says, you can keep your job if you can do your job. And I'm like, okay, what's my job? And I remembered that one of my first jobs I did every time I went there was to do those big orange canisters of Gatorade and to take them from the locker room to the basketball court. In the Coliseum, which is now Key Arena, that's about 500 yards. So I go in there, and I get these orange things, and I unscrew the lids, and then I rip open the thing, and I pour the stuff in there, and I put the hose in, and then I stir it like this, and I screw the lid on. And I do that with 2 of them. And then I get them by the pinkies, and I'm carrying them, dragging them through the Sonics locker room. And as I'm dragging them through, Dennis Johnson says to me, hey, when you get those outside the door, wait for me. I'm going out to shoot for a minute. Because they go out and they shoot, and then they come back, have a team meeting, then they go out and shoot as a team. And okay. I mean, I'm the follower, right? You just do what you do. You do what you're told. So I go outside and I sit down on the canisters. Pretty soon DJ comes out and he hands me the ball and he picks up those canisters. Now about the first 200 yards we're in a tunnel. About the last 300 yards you're walking through the crowd. People asking for autographs. People looking at him. NBA basketball star. 5-time NBA All-Star. 9-time all-defensive team. Guaranteed entry into the Hall of Fame of basketball. One of the greatest defensive players ever. Superstar. 6 weeks without Frank Furtado's knowledge, leader carried followers water. Why? So I could keep my job. Now you might say, well, what's the practical implication? I'll tell you the practical implication for DJ. See, back then, it was before all the microbrews and all that stuff, and after the game, one of my jobs was to hand out beer to the players. And we always had about 24 Budweisers and about 6 Heinekens and about 6 St. Pauli Girl beers. I remember the names and everything. Most everybody drank Budweiser. Guess who drank Heineken? Follower took care of leader. Every single time, DJ drank Heineken. Never drank the bad stuff. I mean, I gave him the good stuff. I'll tell you why. Follower was serving leader. Why? Because leader served follower. His humility earned a devoted follower. I mean, I took care of all the other players as well, but I mean, he got preferential treatment. I followed him. What could you do tomorrow to humble yourself with the people who work with you? To go in there to take a whole different task instead of being a taskmaster, but to humble yourself and say, what can I do to serve you? What could you do if you just walked up and said, hey, what can I do to make your job easier? Is there anything I can do, something I can take off of your plate to make this work? I just want to readdress them very quickly. Communication. What can you do tomorrow to communicate? Make the hard decision. What hard decision do you need to make? Execution. What first step can you do tomorrow to execute the plan? Realistically assess. Maybe it just means taking the legal pad, going through the people, listing out the strengths, listing out the weaknesses, listing out are they in position or out of position. Valuing the relationships of the people in your organization. Taking a look at the wholeness of your integrity and saying, I will make this decision about who I am as a person in my areas of integrity. And what can you do to serve those who follow you and in turn gain even more devoted following? These are the things that will make you the kind of person who doesn't just have one or the other, but you have skills that are tremendous. You'll have character that is tremendous. In doing so, you will garner people's devotion and following, and you will indeed become an extraordinary leader. Thank you.